Hey guys, haven't had a video from the old Japanese farmhouse for a while, so here's one. The old antenna on the roof died, and the price to replace it was going to be about $700, which is fairly excessive for an antenna. So we looked at the other options and it was cheaper to get cable, so we needed to replace the cable coming in from the street from being a solid core cable that it is now to a fiber cable. So first thing we did was prepared for these guys to come, because we know, as we've shown you before, they like to run cables down the outsides of walls. So what we did was we found a route from where the cable would enter the house to where the television is, and we drilled holes and put a string wire in so that they could pull their cable through nice and tidy, instead of stapling it down the wall or something, which they probably would have done if we hadn't done the preparation. And then the truck turned up with its magic cones, put the magic cones out around the bottom of it, of course, keep us all safe. And the guys organised the fibre cable in from the street. Testing the cable there. Of course, they had their own guard man with them. You guys will be recognising these things from other videos, won't you? The guard demand video and the magic cone video and a few other things like that. These guys were great though. We're not actually giving these guys a hard time because they're really good. Here's the cable that I was dragging. It's a figure 8 solid core cable with a 0.25mm fibre optic cable. So there's 3 cores there, one being the fibre optic core, which looks like that when it's exposed. Isn't that amazing? Just incredible, isn't it, how small that is and how much data that can carry. It's incredible, isn't it? So then they pulled that in from the outside through the wall, and then they left after they'd finished their connection, and then the guy that does the internal cabling for TVs turned up about 10 minutes later. It was a pretty smooth operation, it was pretty good. And then he used our pull string to pull the cable through. He was pretty surprised, that they all were actually, that we'd done the preparation. So the end result was this. They didn't do a bad job. By Japan standards, that's fairly standard, just putting it up like that on the outside. This is all pretty standard. They followed our route, but of course the coax cable was a nice cream coloured cable, and this is above the front door of the house too, so it's all fairly exposed from the street, which is something that just everybody here accepts. That's fine, but we have trouble accepting it. So we dusted off the unskilled labourer. He's just spending all his time recently eating desserts at Denny's, so we brushed him off and dusted him off and got him to work. And basically they'd cut the corners with these cables. There's still a bit of slack on them, but they'd cut the corners a bit so that the dark cable stood out over the white parts of the wall. So we just sort of rerouted the cable a little bit so it was a bit neater, so that you couldn't see it standing out against the white so much. And then cleaned off where the holes had been made through the wall and put white silicone in there, because that's the white part of the wall where the holes were. So they did it. The guys did do a good job, and by Japanese standards it was all fairly normal, but we're just a little bit, being the front of the house, we'd sort of prefer to disguise this as much as possible, so use the white silicone to disguise where the holes were, where the cables had passed through. And then out with the brown paint, painting over any of the bits that were passing over anywhere that was brown. Sort of disguising, really, isn't it? Those of you who saw the other videos about the air conditioning and all the other things that have been installed saw we did the same thing. There's a French form of art, isn't there? Isn't there a French art that involves disguising something as something else, as an art form? Sort of like that, really, isn't it? And of course it's not perfect. It doesn't have a perfect result, of course, but it's an improvement and makes it look a little bit less conspicuous, of course. Again, it's just an old house, so it doesn't really matter that much, but we're just sort of doing what we can with it. Happy with that. So here it is. The paint was still wet, so there's still a bit of shine on that cable. That will stop shining when it dries, and that will make it a little bit less conspicuous again, but you can see it's an improvement on what it was. Again, not perfect, but it's an improvement. I can live with that. Happy with that. That's pretty fabulous. So now we've got 1 gigabyte per second of internet speed, 10 cable TV channels, and telephone connection for about $80 a month. Unlimited internet, of course. There's no such thing as limited internet access in Japan. In Australia, you can use up your capacity and then it costs you more, or it stops working altogether, but in Japan it's unlimited. So happy with that. Good outcome. More videos coming soon.